So till for loop we have seen where we have seen different for loops making use of for each, making use of an array and iterating through the array using a simple for loop with the indices and using for each for the arrays. So let's check out the next one, which is a while loop. Right? If you have understood for loop, right, the working model of all loops will be same. Right? There will be initialization, there will be some condition check, and there will be some increment or decrement. But it may not be as a syntax of for. Right? So let's see how it works. So let me write a simple while loop here itself. So let me just say console dot write your value. Example. So here the syntax of while is you have a while token or a keyword, and then you will have a condition. So you have a condition and then open brace and a close brace. So this is a simple while loop which you have, where you can see that it accepts only condition, which means if you compare this with the for loop, right, it can have only the middle part, which is a condition part, and then until that condition is true or whatever condition you are checking is not satisfying, then it will come out of that loop. Simple as that. Let's take an example which I've already taken. So let me just take int t is equal to 0, and in the condition let me give something called t less than 10, right? Which means I want to run this loop until my value of t is less than 10. If it exceeds 10, I don't want to run this loop. Fine. So here let me just say console dot write line of value of t that I give it. So this is what will give me. Now here you can see I am initializing it with 0 and I am checking some condition. Now you can see until unless I do some increment to this t, right, t will always stay 0, right? So that's the reason I will say t plus plus to actually make the value of t move forward. Right. Once it is done, let me just say console dot write line completed, right? And then I want to read a key unless I provide a key, I don't want the console to read. And then I'll say return. Now you can see here I'm writing return here. What does it mean? It means that I don't want to run my remaining piece of code, right? I just want to show you the while loop sample program, and I don't want to move forward to run everything else whatever I have. So that's why I'll just say return, which means it will return or it will get out of this program. Right? That is something which I've done this program. We can see while loop example, we start from 0, right? It came till 9 because I'm checking t is less than 10, right? And then it came out of while loop and it says while loop. So this is how we have a while loop, which is functional, where we are actually giving some condition there. So the next one, so for this loop, let's see how we can create an infinite. Now you can see here, it says I want some condition which always satisfies to run. That's the main ingredient for while loop, right? So just say while, if you are taking the same example, let's say while t is equal to 0, let's say console dot write line of, let me just do it. So here you can see when until your t is 0, it will run, but it will not even enter into this, right? So here, let me just make t again 0, right? And I'm not incrementing anything, which means it will loop continuously. When I run this, you can see it will always print 0. Like a very simple example of, let's say, looping on X. Or if you don't want to go to any specific variable which may vary based on other things, right? Just say while true. This is how we normally create an infinite while, which means while true. What is true? We never know what is true. Which means it will always be true, and it will be running continuously. Let me just say t plus plus here, which means it will be going. Now you can see this is an infinite while loop, and it will be running continuously without limiting. Right? So this is how we create an infinite loop based on the condition we give. And when we say true, which means we are actually forcing it to take true, and it will always be true, and it will never. So it will never. Now this is how we create an infinite loop using a while loop, right? And we can see the pattern how it works is different than a for loop, but the main working model is same. Right? So this is how our while loop works. So let's go to the next one, which is our do while. Right? Now do while and while loop are same, except that in do while we have one advantage, or you may call it as a disadvantage also, that in do while your loop runs at least once. Your actual iteration will be done at least once. Right? So what exactly is this? Now when I say your loop will run at least once, first you should understand what is that at least once. Now here, whenever it is going into the loop, right? What is it checking? It is first checking whether your condition is true or not, right? Now check this out. If it is greater than 0, what happens? Let me just comment the infinite loop once. Right? So if it is, let me say greater than 10. If I run this, right, you can see while loop example, while loop completed. That's it. It never went through any at least one iteration through the while. Right? Which means in while loop it will first check the condition and then it will allow you to enter if the condition is passed. Unless it is passed, right, it won't allow you to enter. That's your while. Now, in your do while, as I said, it will allow you to actually execute your program at least once. Now let's see what is that. So let me create a same layer here. Here's a program. And here let me call it done, right? Because I want to show do while. So let me get console dot write line example. Now syntax is do, open brace, close brace, and then while. Now this is your do while syntax, and here you will get a condition. Now this is clear that, and your semicolon. Now here it's a very clear that you have a do, which means here whatever you write inside will be executed once and then it is checking your condition. Let's take the same example like int I is equal to 0, or rather I would say I can use this t here, right? Your t is 0. Remove this part. And I'm checking whether, first let's see the first, which is t is less than a simple loop, right? And then let's write console dot write line value. Just and so here I'm printing the value of t, right? And then I'm checking it. So here let's say I want to do business. Now when I run this program, let me just, after this while loop, let me just create a console. Let's say and now run this, and you can see do while example, and then you can see from 0 till 9 it will print, and then do while completed. Till here it's perfect. Now let's say I want to check whether t is greater than 10 or not. Right, now you can see t value is 0 and t is value itself is not greater than 0 for the first loop itself. Now let me run this. Now you can see here, now whenever it enters into do while, right? Whenever it enters into do, it will complete one execution and then it will check. Now you can see at least 0 will be printed here, right? And then whenever it increments to 1 and if it is checking t greater than 0, right? Then it follows. Is do while completed. Now this is how it works. At least once it executed and then it is checking. Now, what is the disadvantage we have in this? I mean, sometimes you may want to, even if your loop fails, you want to run it for once. Yes, in that situation it's good. But here, let's say your value of p is 10 initially, right? Then what happens in this situation when I run this? That you can see it will go to infinite. Right? Till my value is greater than 10, I said it's why it is going infinite. Now what happens here is the value is 10, it will print 10 and it will increment to 11, right? Which means before checking this while loop, the value of t became 11. Now from this point on, your t will be growing and it will not stop, which means it will always stay greater than 10. And that's the reason why it will go to infinite, which is obviously something which you are not, maybe expect. So this is a do while loop which you have, and obviously if you want to actually get into details of how to create again a infinite loop, let's say while loop. Now again this while loop is like, you never know how when it's going to end. Now it will obviously go to, it doesn't depend on all the parameters which you are using, but it will go infinite and it will never stop. So this is something how we use do while for connect. And you can see these are the different looping conditions, looping statements I would say, which we can use to execute particular statements for different iterations. Right. So this is about the control statements which we had, where we had a conditional statement and looping statement. We have one thing pending in this, which is a conditional operator. Let's see how it works. Now let me show you that here itself. Or rather, conditional operator is simple to use, but it's very effective. So let's say I have int some L is equal to 9. I have something. I'll just show you how. Let me just take what I want to check is if L value is greater than some condition. In some condition I want to get true, and in some other condition I want to get false. This is my simple requirement. Normally how do we write? Let's say if my L is greater than 90, let's say I have a boolean value which is bool a result, let's say. So the variable in this result. Now let's say I'm gonna take it as the result is equal to true. Else result is equal to false. Like a simple statement how we write if now here you say always you have to assign something. So let me assign this. Now let me print that console.write line of result. Right. So here it will give you false because your I value is not greater than 90, but it's 90. That's why it will give you false. Let me show you how to write the same multi-line. There are 4 different statements which you wrote. We can actually complete this in one single statement. How? Like this. So I want a result based on my condition. My condition is nothing but L is greater than 90. Right? Now in this condition, what do I do? That is nothing but a condition. Now in this condition, I want to give it as a true or false. Now this is how we normally write a condition statement. If this is correct, then return true. Else part is nothing but this. Return false. Now this is how we normally write a simple condition. Now let's run this and you get a say. Let's say here I am checking if L is less than 90. Sorry, less than 90 I'm checking. If we run this, you can see it will give me false. Right? Let's say I'm checking if I is L is equal to 90. Now this is how you can use a conditional operator for the condition statements. What about else if? Now let's say you have else if L is like less than or equal to 100, and let's say this is one of my conditions. Let's say result is equal to, let's say, even in this case, let's say I mean something I'm choose. What about this? So here, let's take a simple example. Let's say if it is equal to 90, I want to make it true. Also, if it is less than 100, let's say I want to make it true. In all else situations, I want to make it false. Now this is my basic situation. Now here, how do I do that? Now here you can see I have a L is equal to 90. In this situation, it's true. But I have to go again with this else if, right? Now here what you can do is you can write one more conditional operator. Okay. Now what I would do here is I will check whether L is less than 100. If yes, I am return true, or else yes. You can see I can actually improve this to any number of levels I want. Now again, this is a separate condition I am writing, right? Which means what does it do? It will do whenever it is true, it will give it true. Otherwise, I am checking remaining things. Right? Whenever it is less than 100, we have to be true or else false. Right? So let's say I'm going to give this as 110. Let's see what happens. When it is 110, then I is equal to 90. Let me just comment this. If when I is 90, now this is not correct, which means it will not go to true, it will go to this. When it goes to the else, which means again there is a separate condition. And I am checking whether I is less than 100. No, it is not. Then it will go to false, and this false, first it will return here, and this will be assigned to result. That's what happens. So this out you can see that false. Right? So this is how we normally work with conditional operator to actually make it. You can see that everything whatever we have done is in a single statement, right? Which means your execution will be done so fast using your conditional operators, and it is always better to actually use advanced operators whenever you are looking for examples. Right? Now these are looping statements or rather control statements which we have in C#. Right? So this is about it. So if you have any questions across, you can ask now. We will see what is class and object, right? So if you remember in our previous classes, right, let me just go to the top. Here we have seen a class, right, where we have seen one class called human class, right? So in the human class we have, so here we had a human class, right, where we have seen some behaviors and attributes, and we said, these are the two, at the most divisions which we can have in a class, right? Now, so in this, so if you have a class, right, now the class is like a template where you have some features and behavior to share. Now out of the template, if you don't create an actual human, then what is the use? There is no use, right? Which means, let me take an example of Sam. Now I would say Sam is an object of a human class. What does it mean? Out of a human class where there are predefined behaviors and attributes, I am actually creating a person, right, named Sam, which means Sam can have all the behaviors and attributes whatever human class has. That is nothing but, now this is called as an object of human class, right, where my human class, right, I have everything written here where behaviors and attributes are there, and I'm creating Sam in some other, in some other place where I'm actually trying to get an object out of my human class. Now this is a raw way of understanding like what exactly is a class and an object of a class. Now here, let's see how we can actually do that in program. But till now we have seen classes, right? And continuously we were actually watching that main. Now we have already seen few things like method, variable, how to pass the argument, how to get a return and all, right? But we have seen everything in the same class, right? We haven't seen something in across a class or across across the classes and across the namespaces, right? Now today we'll actually check that out. So let me create a new project. Let me call it as class and object. Right? Now anyway, so for any project, right, for any solution or any set of main projects, you need at least one class which contains a main. So let's say I have one class called program, right, which is my class where I do have a main. Now let me create one more class. So here let me call it as my class, right, and enter add. Now I hope you have seen this. In order to create a class in your project, you can right click on the project and go to add, and you can directly go to add a class. Or else, if you don't find the item which you have here, you can always go to new item and you can actually search over here. You'll actually get everything you want, right, to search for. And if you know specifically what you want, you can go here. You can see if you are looking for code, you can go for the code. And if you are looking for some data model search, you can go here, right? In that way, you can actually go. You can, you have a specific things to add also. Or else select on the main tree where you will get everything. Right? So now this is my simple class where I'll create a variable and a simple method. Let me just call it as a public int I is equal to 90. And this is my simple variable, right? And I have a simple and let me write a simple method. Now simple method, in a sense, I'll write public void. Let me just say it as print data is my method name. And simply I'm just writing in this method as console.writeLine of this is my first class and object. Fine. So this is something which I have written in some other class. Now initially, if you remember, in all our previous classes we used to create, right, are variables and methods in the same class. But now we're talking about separate class. Why I'm actually taking this now is, so as we are trying to do a calculator program assignment, right? So I want you guys to do that, right? So here I want you guys to use the actual logic of calculator in a separate class. When I say actual logic, whenever you're writing a method, like if you're writing a method for adding two numbers, right? Don't write in the same program class as a separate method, rather write in a separate class like my class and do that. And how to call that method and everything is same, right? Now this program.cs is some other class. Now let's say I want to use my class variables and methods, right? If you have a class and if you are not using that, then there is no use of that class normally. Now class is something which is a logical separation of different code, different code you have, where you can actually use that code in different sections, right? Now let's see, this is a class you have created, and let's see how can we create an object. Now for creating an object, or for instantiating, or for constructing, now all these words, keywords are nothing but specifies something which creates an object. Now if you remember how to construct an array, right? You remember the syntax, right? Now the syntax was like int, let's say you are creating array I or abc is equal to new, we are using int of some 9. Now this is how, right, we actually construct an array. Whenever you say construct or creation of any new object, we use new. Same way here we can actually use something called my class. Let me take a variable called obj or anything you can take, is equal to, I have to use a new my class. So this is how I create an object of my class. Now, why do I have to create an object of my class? Rather, can't I use everything whatever is written directly? There is a way to do that, but it's a separate, it's all a separate thing which we have. We'll learn this once we are done with this. Now, as of now, you can see when I define something straightforward, right, without that specific keyword, then you will have to create an object to access these things. Now, how can I access that? Method, print data, and variable I. Now we will be using resolution operator dot again. Now you can see whenever I say obj dot, you can see I can access I and also print data, right? So let me access I, let me print that console dot write line of obj dot I, let's say. I can see I'm able to access my I. Same way, console dot write line, or just call obj dot print data. Now why I'm using console dot write line for this? Because this is static data, right? I mean, this is just a data. I'm printing this. But this method is something, if I call this method here, right, in my program, which means it will go to this method, I'm doing some operation, I'm printing something here. It will print and it will come back to my main method. Right? Once it is done, let me just say, I want to read a key to exit the console. Now this is a simple way how you can actually create an object of a class. Let me run this program. Now you can see 90. Now I'm in my program.cs, where I haven't created any variable or anything, but I'm trying to access my class object, and I created an object and then I'm trying to access a variable. Now you can see obj.I is nothing but 90. And after that I've called a method called obj.print data. Now in this print data, it will go to the print method and then it will print, this is my first class object, and then it will come out of the program, and then it is waiting for my key, read key. If I provide any key, it goes. Fine. So this is how we create an object, right, of a class to use different variables and methods. Fine. Now, as I said, you can actually create, let me give you a simple method which will sum two numbers and give you. Let's say I have public int, which is a return type, and let me just call method name as sum, and I have two arguments, int a comma right. I'm actually doing this. Now let's say I want to sum two numbers and return. Now you can use the same code if you want. Now I would say return of a plus b, simple. Now what it will do before returning anything, right? Before returning anything, right? It will actually sum up these two numbers, which is a and b. It will get the result and it will return. Now if you don't understand this right directly, you can always take a variable, separate variable. Let me just say int s is equal to, you can do a plus b to be more simple. First sum up and then take it into variable and then return that variable. Yes. So it's very clean way if you want to do it this way. Right? First what you are doing, you are actually summing up first, taking it into variable and then you are returning it. Fine. Now here let me call that method, which is obj dot sum. Now you can see as soon as you create an object, as soon as you create a method there, it will give you that name. And here you can see it also gives you a complete signature. Now what exactly you are looking for. Let's say I'll give A is 90 and B as 110. Right? Now this will give me sum. Now I will hold this sum in some other variable called t, let's say, and I'm gonna print that sum. Console dot write line of sum result. So this is my result of the sum I'm using. So let's run this. Now you can see here when I sum up, you can see 90 and 120. I got a result of 120. Now here what I am asking you to do is this 90 and 100, instead of actually making it hard coded, right? I just want you guys to retrieve from user. Now, I hope you know how to retrieve from user, right? Now it is something how to do this. I'll just give you one variable, console.write line, let's say enter one value, and here I'm going to take it into string, let's say first value is equal to console dot read line, right? So it will, so these two lines, I mean I'm just giving enter value, and the main task, I mean the input is actually, you know, the input we are actually giving to read line, which will read and give it to first file. Now this first file I do have, and what I'll do, I'll use it in, let's say in place of 90 I'll use this. How can I use? Because you can see sum requires an integer, right? But it is a string. You have to parse it to make it integer. Now this is how we provide first value, and second value anyways you can actually write the code. And this is something which is 110. So let's run this program. Now you can see it stops at enter a value, right? Let me call it as 290. I'm just giving a value as 290 and enter. Now you can see the result is 400, right? I'm actually summing up. Now 290, I mean when I give a value 290 plus 110, it will give me a result 400. The sum result is 400. Simple as that. Now this is how you create an object of a class, right, where you can actually use your variables and methods. Now, the next one is you can also create a variables and methods in your class which you can access directly without creating an object. What is that? Now that is nothing but if you use static for any method or any variable, right, then it will actually make you, or it will, now that is the one which gives you access to that variable and method directly. But there is one condition, that your variables or methods, right, should be accessible. Now why I have written public here, let me just remove this public and show you what happens. When you remove, you see here, it says inaccessible due to production level. Don't worry, we'll actually come to access modifiers. What is public, why we actually wrote this public and all. Now, whenever you're creating any object, right, I'm just giving public. Now, public is nothing but whenever I assign or create any variable and make it public in the class, which means that public variable will be accessible by any object I create outside the my class world. Now that's the reason why I was able to access. Now as soon as I remove public from here, it says inaccessible. Don't worry, access modifiers and how to actually make different things accessible, we'll see in our next class immediately once we are done with this. Fine. Now let's see what is the static variable. So till now, whatever we have seen, right, we create an object and we are actually trying to access a variable or a method. So these type of variables or methods are called as object variable variables or methods or functions, because we are trying to we are accessing these variables and methods using object only. Without object, you can't access these variables and methods. Now, let me write a simple other variable called public static. Let me call long L is equal to, let's say, 900. Right. Now you can see all other methods are not static. If you remember, we were discussing on static void main, right? I said, what is static? Now here is a actual significance of static we have. Whenever we make any method or a variable or anything static, right? So then what happens here is, this variable to access, you don't need an object. Let me show you that. So let me just get rid of block here. So here we have in my class dot, you can see L. You can see we have got many methods and variables here. L, I, print data, sum. But you can see here, whenever I use a resolution operator, right, I can use only L. L is nothing but the variable which I have defined. Let me just print this. Now you can see this is L value which I am able to access from L without any object creation. Right? Let me start this. Now you can see L value 900. Right? So this is nothing but your static. Okay. Now you can see there is an exception, because we have to give one enter value, right? I just gave one enter, which means I'm giving null here. You can see it's a null. That's the reason why it failed. Now, okay, as we got a situation here, let me show you how to actually do debugging here, playing a smart code. Now here, whenever you get any exception, right, what you can do, you can actually always get back. How to get back to this question is, we can see here something called set next statement, set next statement, which means we are forcing a compiler running a step back again, right? And when I press F10, you can see it again came back here to accept something. Let me do 20 here and enter. Now you can see, now my first value becomes, now you can see here, this is something where while debugging or solving an issue, right, this will actually help you. Now, let's say even if you give 20, I want to try it with 100. Now how to do that? You don't have to again go back and do it. You can directly go here, just double click on this or just select that and press enter. 100 and enter. Now, automatically your first value will be changed. This is completely editable. Now whenever you just do F10, right, now you have result based on the value edited here. 100 plus 110 which will give you 210. Now that's the value which we get here. Now good that we got an error, right? Now this is how you can do that. Now that is something which is a static variable, right? Now let's create a static method here. Let me say public static int. Let me say I want to multiply. Let me just say I'm just taking multiply in a comma b. I have this method where, so it's always good to write variables on the top, declare variables on the top, and always try to write methods next to that. Now here let me use a straightforward way return of a into p, right? Your star mark will actually give you is a operator to multiply two numbers. Now you can see this method is static, which means I can use this method directly without creating an object, which means my class is my class name. Now you can see I'm actually able to access my static long variable and static method using direct class name. Dot, you can see we have a multiplier, right? Let's say I'm gonna take 10, 90, which will give me my result. Let me just take it as int O is equal to result, and then let me print that console dot write line or multiplication result as O. Okay, so then let me say console dot read line, and then let me just return it. Fine. Now to run this, you can see my result is 900 because I just gave 10 and 90. Right? So this is how you have your static method and static variable. Now these type of variables and methods which you can access directly from class are called as your class variables or methods. Right? So these are the two different things which you have. One is an object variable or method, or a class variable or method. Right? Now here to make it more, let's go into more deeper into this. Now let's say here in a class you can have both static and non-static variables, and you can have both static and non-static methods too. Right? I hope you understood the significance of a static when you use for any variable or a method. Right? So it can be accessible directly from your class, which are static, but object variables can be accessed only with object. Now here is one more term which you have. Now this is my object. If you try to access your static variable, see, you will be able to check the values here. When I say L, which is my static variable, right? L. Now you can see here this is not accessible here, right? So here in .NET you won't be able to access your static variable using your object. It is completely removed, that type of access. But if you go to other languages like Java, right? In Java, your static variables are accessible both through class and through object also. But here it is not there. So it's more clear that your static variables can be accessed directly through class, and your non-static variables. Non-static variable is nothing but if you don't use static keyword, that is a non-static variable. Can be accessed only using your class or object. Fine. Now that is something. And the next very important concept is, let's say I have a static long L variable, right? Here I can use that variable here. Like let's say I want to multiply with L again. I can access static long L over here. But normally why it is giving error is we are actually returning int, right? That's the reason why it is not so. Let's make it int here. It's a simple typecasting which we have to use, right? Now when I say int L, I can see I can use static variable L in my static method. Now can I use my static variable L in non-static? Let's try. When I do L again here, I can see that yes, I am able to use my static variable in both static and non-static methods. Now how about non-static method? Can I use non-static I in non-static sum? Yes. Let's see. Plus I'm just using it. See what happens. Yes, I'm able to use. I'm not getting any error over here. Now can I use this non-static variable in a static method? Let me try to multiply that into 5. Now you can see there is a problem. Now this I is an object variable of class my class. But here you can see I'm trying to use an object variable in a class method which is not allowed. You can see here it says you have to reference only a non-static field in here, right? Because this is a static method where we are using non-static. This is not allowed. Maybe this, whatever I just said is maybe confusing on static and non-static, but I want you guys to go through this video again and again and understand this behavior. So this behavior, understanding this behavior is very important. So which variable we can use in which type of method and which variable is not allowed to call. Right? That is very important. Now this is something which is your static and non-static variables and methods, and which you can call from your program. Right? So that is about your class and object, and your object variables or methods, or class variables or methods calling from different classes. Now in this way you can create any number of classes, any number of methods, any number of variables and all. Okay. So this is about a class and object which we have, and we have seen static variables too. So in our tomorrow's class we'll actually see further topics on constructor and all, because while creating object we have few more things which are getting